oh, that faction is busted. That's the only reason why you win 40k. Nonsense. I've heard that take so much time, but today I'm going to show you with data from some very recent tournaments how skill is by far the most defining characteristic of who is going to win a game of Warhammer 40k. This should empower you to make sure that you are doing the best that you can because you are in control of absolutely everything. Don't let people say that you can't perform because of your army list, you can't perform because of your whatever. No, you can perform and it's up to you. Guys, I'm Doc Crump, and I am a top 100 player. I am a professional Warhammer 40 coach, and I am here to bring you all of the most relevant information and strategies and tactics to make you the best possible player that I can be. I absolutely adore strategy and tactics, and I've used it in my previous career as a chiropractic neurologist in order to help me make super, super big connections as I'm treating patients. And now I've been taking that skill set towards Warhammer 40k to apply my critical thinking skills. And I'm going to basically teach you guys and show you how to navigate the complex world of Warhammer 40k. So let's just jump right into this. What I'm going to show you today is I'm going to show you data from 3 different tournaments, and I'm going to break all of this information down for you so that you can understand that, yeah, skill is actually the biggest freaking determining factor when it comes to who is going to win a game of Warhammer 40k. There's a lot of information out there that people have been showing, and you've seen graphs like this, which is showing crazy win rates for the Orcs, the Blood Angels, the Sisters of Battle, the Space Marines, the Forge Father Seekers in particular are currently sitting at an 80% win rate. And people are like, oh, but it's busted. The detachment is doing everything. But I'm going to show you that's not necessarily true, especially when you look at the ones that are not performing well. Well, Necrons with their Cursed Legion, they're at a 25% win rate. They must be terrible. The Subterranean Assault is at a 22% win rate. It must be the worst army in the game. But is it, though? Well, these things can actually be very, very misleading when you see things like this. So I'm going to kind of dig a little bit more into the data today, and I'm going to show you why while this data is not lying to you, it's also not really telling you the freaking truth. So the 3 tournaments I'm going to use data from is going to be the ATC, which was a 36-team, 8-man event. Then you had Birmingham Open, which was 198-player Super Major, and then we had the Dawn of War, which was a 50-player GT. That's the one I did into. The reason why I chose these 3 tournaments is because, one, I was focused on data in my local area, because obviously I just do. And then I chose the other largest tournaments that we've seen. So the Birmingham Open was massive. It's the largest singles tournament that we've had thus far into 11th edition, and then the ATC was the largest tournament that we've had thus far into 11th edition. And they all come from like different areas. So Birmingham was in the UK, obviously. The ATC was in America, obviously. So it really is combining a bunch of different regional data, and that's why I've chosen these 3 that I'm going to be pulling data from for the purposes of this video. So let's pop into the different ways that the things that are really influencing the win rate. And a lot of people like to start with dispositions. Now, personally, I think dispositions is incredibly important, but it's not quite as influential as to who is going to be winning the matchup as you might expect. As a matter of fact, when we tally all the games from these events, we've got 526 Purge games, which means that the Purge the Foe disposition actually only has a 53% win rate. Now, of course, this is not controlled for the mirror. This is not controlled for a lot of things. So there's room to interpret this. But when you really look at it all, Take and Hold has a 50% win rate overall. Priority Assets has a 51% win rate overall. Recon with a 47% win rate overall. It's a little bit low, but it's still within that kind of sweet spot that GW likes for balance purposes. The only one that's really out of the range that GW likes for balance is going to be Disruption. And even then, we've got actually some interesting things that I'm going to show you later where like skillful players are just doing crazy thing with the Disruption disposition. I know I said disposition earlier. Pardon me. So dispositions are actually pretty dang important for influencing the output of the game, but not as important as everyone, including myself, really kind of expected. Let's talk about the next thing. Detachments and builds. Now, this is a really kind of interesting thing, interesting little chart here that I've got for you guys. One thing that I want to let people know is that it's kind of impossible to detach the concept of builds from detachments. So we can look at detachments win rate, but we really don't know what that build is when it comes to like, when you're aggregating BCP data or whatever. You could have 2 different, I'll just use for an example, Grand Coven Thousand Suns lists that have completely different builds in it. So it's like, well, one build isn't necessarily, where one detachment, while one detachment might have a higher win rate, another detachment might have a lower win rate, but the detachment with the lower win rate might have a specific build that has a crazy high win rate. So that's why these things can get a little complicated, and it can get a little bit, hard to interpret when we're trying to decide like what is really dictating the data. So most attachments are actually really coin flippy. So I got a little chart here for you guys. So this is the disposition of win rates across 51 different detachments, because over the course of those three um, events that I had spoken about, the ATC, the Dawn of War, and the Birmingham Open Super Major, we have 51 detachments that really competed. Approximately, 18% of it all is going to be right, or 18 of those detachments is going to be right in between that 50 to 59% win rate. You've got one super outlier, and that's going to be the Forge Father Seekers with that 80% win rate, and then we've got like 4 that are really down at the lowest. And if I remember correctly, that was going to be your Subterranean Assault. Actually, I can just back up a slide and we can take a quick look at this. That was going to be your Tyranids, Necrons, Eldari, Sisters with these detachments in particular. Now, this doesn't say that these detachments are actually terrible. It just means that as far as we're looking for distributions, those are the ones that are severely underperforming. But what I really want to point your attention to is that these detachments are actually really, really well distributed. So the vast majority of them are sitting within a very reasonable win rate. And there's very few outliers. Now, here's the problem with looking at data like this. You might say, oh, okay, well, that means that Forge Fathers is completely busted. That might mean that Subterranean Assault is completely terrible. Because when we look at charts like this, we actually cannot separate the concept of skill from detachment. Typically speaking, your skillful players are going to be playing detachments that are probably have a slight edge. So even though a detachment might only have like a slight edge over other detachments, if all the skillful players are looking for a 1% edge, they're going to flock towards that 1% stronger detachment, which is going to create a actually even bigger gap in the disparity of the win rate for the detachment that might only be 1% stronger than the other. It's going to create an artificial looking gap, making that detachment seem like it's way, way, way stronger. So for example, if people are Marines players, and we're looking at Forge Father Seekers right now, which is salamanders. And for the love of God, GW, please give salamanders their moment in the sun. My boys need it. Like they've had a time without any luck. You don't immediately nerf at them into oblivion. So let's just use this as the example, okay? All right, so salamanders, that detachment is really, really strong. Forge Father Seekers, and they're pairing it in order to probably with Librarius in order to get like a few buffs on. Okay, very, very powerful. But is it that much stronger than every other detachment, or is it just the fact that the better players are actually choosing to run Forge Father Seekers because it does give them a slight edge? Well, when we look into the data of players' ELO, and I'll explain what ELO means in just a moment. It's just well, I'll do it now. ELO is basically just a ranking system to show like players' average skill level. So when we look at higher ranked ELO players or higher skilled players, they're going to choose detachments that give them a slight edge, and that's going to create this massive disparity of how good that detachment actually is versus how good the players playing it really are. So it's going to create this thing anyway. So we can't just separate skill from detachments when we're looking at like how actually powerful are detachments. So let's look at the next thing that we actually can separate, and this is completely under control. ELO, otherwise player skill. Oh, sorry, hit my microphone. So ELO is just a running skill score. Effectively, what happens is all players who are playing in ranked tournaments, generally things on BCP, sometimes you can get ELO for some other systems, but most of it will be drawing from BCP data or Best Coast pairings. If you don't know what that is, Best Coast pairings is where most people log tournament information. So ELO is a running skill score. So if you have an opponent, like take me for example, my ELO score right now is I think like 1847, something like that. It's 1840s. And if you compare me to a player who is equal-ish skill level, we'll both be within 50 points ELO. If I beat someone within that range, I'm probably going to go up by 4 or 5 points on the ELO rankings. If I get beat by someone that same skill level, I'll be going down by 4 or 5 ELO points. However, if me sitting at 1840s, which puts me at like a top 100, if I beat say Liam VSL, who's sitting at like 21, whatever, he's one of the best players in the world, that's going to pop me up by maybe 50 points off of that one win. Maybe not quite that much, but you guys get the example. If you beat someone who's better than you, or higher ranked than you rather, you're going to gain more points than if you beat someone who's equal ranked or lower ranked. If you're beating someone significantly lower ranked, it's probably not going to move at all. But if you lose to someone better than you, you're also not going to drop that much. But if you lose to someone significantly worse than you, or significantly lower ranked than you, as it were, then you're probably going to drop much lower in ELO. So it's a pretty good way of ranking. Now, interesting, when we dig through all of the data for the ATC, the Birmingham Open, our GT, what we see is that there is a major ELO skill gap, meaning players with higher ELO win, regardless of detachment, regardless of timing in the tournament, whether it's round 1 through round 5. ELO skill gap accounts for 26% of victories. So you can have players who have a higher ranked ELO, and they can be played in an unfavorable matchup. Let's say one of the most obvious unfavorable matchups that we currently have is Tau versus Votann. Tau currently have like a 75% win rate over Votann. But if you have a high ranked ELO player running the Votann player, they're almost always going to be beating the Tau player. It's the way that this actually works. I'm going to show you some of that here in just a moment. But let me finish my point here on ELO. So here's this little skill demonstration. Okay, so like I just described, your ELO gap, it basically just means how much better one player's track record says they are than the other opponents. And when we look at these numbers, if you have a 200-point gap, it's a very lopsided like predictive outcome. So if you have 200 points higher on ELO, you've got like an 83% chance of winning that game, which is kind of wild when you think about. And this is agnostic of detachment. This is agnostic of anything. It is just two neutral players. If you have 200 points higher ELO on the other person, data is showing us that you have like straight up an 83% chance of beating the other person. So a 100 to 200 ELO gap, which I've got right here, is going to be right in the middle of it. It's going to be roughly, I think it was like 71%. 50 to a 100 ELO gap, you're going to be sitting at a 59% win rate percentage, or edge in just determining who wins. And then if you're 0 to 50 points, it's going to be pretty close to even. I think it's like a 55% gap if you're just like at 50 points or lower above your opponent. So when we're looking at this, it really shows that players with a higher skill ranking, which isn't the same thing as skill level. I mean, you've got some people who are underrepresented on ELOs. You've got some people who are overrepresented. But it is a pretty good way of determining what player is technically better than the other. It's pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. When we see this, it shows us straight up, it doesn't matter what detachment you're running. The higher skilled player is the guy who wins, which is pretty dang cool. So let me just give you some examples of this, right? So when we looked earlier, I showed you that Subterranean Assault was sitting at a cool 22% win rate, which is disgustingly bad. But a Subterranean Assault player, piloted by the glorious Florence Monders, congratulations, by the way, he's finished third at the Birmingham Super Major, and he went 5-1-0 with a sub-assault disruption list. Now, disruption, if you remember, was at the 44% win rate. And Subterranean Assault was at a 22% win rate. Yeah, Florence Monders goes 5-1. This is because Florence Monders is a very good player. He actually ended up playing exceptionally well, and he crushed the opposition. He ended up third at Birmingham. Congratulations, mad respect to you, my friend. Another great example of we've got Alex Gines, and he was also at the Birmingham Super Major. So he went number 19th, and he was 4-1 with Need Guard, Hearthguard. This was Votann. Now, when we look at our actual Tau and Votann stats here, let me kind of maximize this window for you guys so you can show it, and then I'll get it out of the way for the next one. Tau have a massive victory against Votann in most scenarios. Now, the reason why it says 5.6, that's not 5.6 victory points. This is 5.6 WTC points, because that's the way that I'm in Teams WTC mode right now. So when I'm calculating points, we're calculating it based off of like the differentials. So in game, this would be approximately a 25-point differential if you were talking in a singles context. So Tau actually have a massive ratio or predictive chance of beating Votann. It's actually one of the matchups that's like, oh, skill almost doesn't matter because it's so overwhelmingly in favor of Tau just from a faction thing. So, but what's really interesting is Alex Gines, his largest victory was 142 against Tau, because skill will basically always be more important than faction matchup. That doesn't mean hard counters don't exist. Hard counters do exist, and the only way to really get over that gap is with skill. And then lastly, we've got the CSM sitting in there with a 44% win rate. So this actually is not particularly great. It's actually below that sweet spot where GW likes things to be balanced. Of course, early edition, low data set. Take all these numbers with a grain of salt, guys. Things will change as we get more and more data for 11th edition. I'm aware of that. You're aware of that. It's been said. But what's really interesting is we get Theo Hyatt. Congratulations to you, sir, who ended up at the Birmingham Super Major in place number 2. He went 6-1. He only lost in the absolute finals, and he did it with a Soul Forged Warpack freaking Chaos Space Marines list, and that was really, really awesome. The faction was only averaging a 44% win rate, but this guy crushed everyone's souls, and he only lost to the Thousand Suns player who ended up winning. Oh goodness gracious, what was his name? I'm gonna pull it up here. Sam Nash, who's a fantastic player. Congratulations, Sam, for winning. So he only lost in the finals against Sam Nash, who was playing a Thousand Suns, who has one of the highest win rates in the entire game right now. As a matter of fact, I can go back to the beginning of the presentation. I can share that with you as well. So if we look at Thousand Suns with a 66% win rate, CSM is at a 44% win rate. Why is he able to do so well? Well, he's able to do so well because his skill is outrunning everything else. Now, if you have players of equal skill and one faction is sitting at a 66% win rate and the other's at a 44% win rate, yeah, okay, at that point, your faction is generally going to be one of the bigger determining factors to see who's going to win the matchup. But that's only about players of equal skill. Most of the time, when we're having players at lopsided skill, the skill is always the number one predictor of who is going to be winning. So what does this all mean? Why did I bother making this video and having you guys listen to me ramble on about all this stuff? Well, the reason is because you guys need to understand that you are in control. You're not at GW's mercy. You're not at my mercy. You're not at Art of War's mercy. It doesn't matter what talking head on the internet is telling you. If you play better and you continue to increase your skill level, run whatever freaking army you want. Man, I'm saying that word a lot. I'm going to stop saying it. Drinking games, right? So run the army that you love, run the disposition, the detachments that you love, create the build that works for you, and increase your player skill. Become a better player. And that's what we are all about here at Happy Crop. And we're here about taking accountability and responsibility for what we can control. And we can absolutely control how good of a player that we are. This is how you dominate 40k and how you enjoy your hobby. So skill is top. It's the most important thing. Skill encourages strong builds. If you're a more skilled player, you're probably going to be better at building lists. Skill plus a good build plus maybe a little bit of luck is going to create wild success, and then you'll have hundreds of millions of dollars and every woman you could ever want, because that's what Warhammer 40k is. It's the greatest sport in existence. I say that flippantly, but the reality is this is very true, and this applies to all aspects of your life. If you have the skill, then you start applying that to other aspects of whatever you're in. With just a little bit of luck, you're going to be incredibly successful. You can make this happen. Don't worry about what the win rates say. Worry about what you can control, which is your skill. And if you want to learn more about creating more skill, you can look me up down below. The links for private coaching is in my coffee, which is linked in the description down below. And also be on the lookout for my accelerator course, which is going to be launching very, very soon. It's going to be a 6-session intensive where we are going to be going through all of the principles of list building and dominating in 11th edition. So check it out for that. You should probably see something about it in about a week when I really announce registration for it. So until next time, I hope you all have an amazing day. Crump on. Bye-bye.